Sunday mornings used to be Amara's favorite time of the week. The small church sat between two aging buildings on a busy Lagos street. The white paint had begun peeling years ago, but nobody seemed to care. The congregation loved the place. It was where children were dedicated, weddings were celebrated, funerals were mourned. It felt like home. Amara sat quietly near the middle row while the pastor preached from the altar.
Sometimes God's delay is not God's denial.
He said,
Many blessings arrive only after the person is ready to carry them.
A few voices answered with, Amen. But Amara lowered her eyes. She had heard messages like this her entire life. Trust God. Be patient. Your season is coming. The words no longer comforted her. They irritated her. Because patience was easy to preach when your bills were paid. Patience was easy when your roof wasn't leaking. Patience was easy when your child wasn't about to be sent home over unpaid school fees. The service ended shortly afterward. Outside, church members gathered beneath the afternoon sun. Some discussed football. Others spoke about politics. Children chased each other through the parking lot. Amara forced a smile whenever someone greeted her. Inside, she felt exhausted, not physically, but emotionally. As she walked toward her car, her phone vibrated. The screen displayed a message from David's school. Her stomach tightened immediately. She opened it. The outstanding balance remained unpaid. If the fees were not settled by Friday, David would be suspended from classes until payment was made. Amara stared at the screen, then quietly locked her phone. She already knew. The reminder changed nothing, because she had no idea where the money would come from. The apartment greeted her with silence. A small 2-bedroom flat on the 3rd floor of an aging building. The walls carried water stains from previous rainy seasons. The ceiling fan rattled whenever it rotated. The furniture looked older every year. None of it bothered her before, but now she noticed everything. David sat at the dining table doing homework when she entered. The boy looked up immediately.
How was church?
Good.
Amara smiled.
Did Pastor tell another farming story?
The smile faded as quickly as it came, because children notice more than adults realize. David tilted his head.
Mom, are we okay?
The question caught her off guard. She forced another smile.
Of course.
She stared for a moment longer before nodding, but she could tell he wasn't convinced. Later that night, after David had gone to sleep, Amara sat alone at the kitchen table. A notebook rested before her. Numbers filled the page. Rent, electricity, food, transportation, school fees. She checked them again, then again. But the result never changed. The money wasn't enough. It had not been enough for months. She closed the notebook and rubbed her eyes. The apartment was silent except for the distant sound of traffic outside. For a brief moment, she allowed herself to imagine a different life. A larger home, financial security, the ability to buy things without calculating the consequences first. The ability to say yes when David needed something. Her phone suddenly buzzed. A social media notification. Amara opened it absent-mindedly, then froze. The post belonged to Sandra, a former university friend. Sandra stood beside a brand new SUV decorated with ribbons. The caption read, "God has been faithful." Thousands of likes filled the screen. Comments poured in. "Congratulations. You deserve it. God when? Living the dream." Amara continued scrolling. Vacation photos, luxury restaurants, designer clothes, business conferences, a new apartment. Every picture seemed brighter than the last. She remembered sharing a hostel room with Sandra years ago. Back then, neither of them had anything. They survived on instant noodles and optimism. Now Sandra's life looked completely different. Amara placed the phone on the table, then picked it up again, then put it down once more. Something uncomfortable twisted inside her chest. Not hatred, not resentment. Something quieter. something she didn't want to name. For the first time in years, she found herself asking a dangerous question. Why is everyone moving forward except me? The thought lingered long after she went to bed. And somewhere in the darkness, a small crack appeared in the patience she had spent years building. The next few weeks followed the same pattern. Wake up, go to work, count every naira, worry about bills, sleep, repeat. The routine felt endless. Amara worked as a secretary at a small law firm on Victoria Island. The pay wasn't terrible. It simply wasn't enough. Not anymore. Everything seemed more expensive than it had been a year ago. Fuel, food, rent, school fees. Even the bus fare kept increasing. One Tuesday afternoon, she sat at her desk organizing client files when her manager stepped out of his office.
Amara,
Yes, sir?
Handed her an envelope.
for your hard work,
Amara blinked.
Sir?
a bonus.
For the first time all week, she smiled.
Thank you.
The man nodded before walking away. Her mood improved immediately. A bonus wasn't much, but right now, every little bit mattered. During lunch break, she opened the envelope. The smile disappeared. The amount barely covered 2 weeks of groceries. She hated herself for feeling disappointed. Most people received nothing. She knew that. Yet she couldn't stop staring at the figures. The gap between what she earned and what she needed continued growing. That Friday, she attended David's school meeting. The classroom buzzed with parents discussing grades and future plans. Most conversations sounded the same. Extra lessons, private tutors, educational programs, summer activities, opportunities. Everything required money. Amara sat quietly in the back, listening, comparing, feeling smaller with each passing minute. Then she noticed a familiar face, Sandra. The two women locked eyes. A huge smile appeared on Sandra's face.
Amara?
Several parents turned as Sandra crossed the room. She hugged her tightly.
Look at you.
Amara laughed. Sandra looked exactly as social media suggested. Expensive handbag, perfect makeup, designer shoes. She radiated the kind of confidence money often creates. The two women sat together while waiting for the meeting to begin.
What have you been up to?
Sandra asked.
Work, David, life.
Sandra laughed.
You still answer questions the same way.
And you still ask them.
They both smiled. For a few moments, it felt like university again. Then the meeting ended. Parents began leaving. Outside the school gates, Sandra unlocked a luxury SUV. Amara couldn't hide her surprise. Sandra noticed immediately.
You like it?
Like it? Sandra, this thing costs more than my apartment?
Sandra laughed loudly. For a moment, neither woman spoke. Then Sandra asked a question.
Are you happy?
Amara wasn't prepared for it. She hesitated, only for a second. But Sandra noticed. The smile on Sandra's face softened.
I know that look.
What look?
The look of someone carrying too much.
Amara forced a laugh.
I'm fine.
No, you're surviving.
The words landed harder than expected, because they were true. Sandra leaned against her vehicle.
You know what's funny?
What?
We were supposed to be successful by now.
Amara smiled weakly.
Tell me about it.
I'm serious.
Sandra crossed her arms.
We spent years following every rule. Study hard, work hard, pray hard, be patient. And where did it get us?
Sandra asked, and Amara frowned.
It seems to have worked out for you.
Sandra smiled.
Because I stopped waiting.
The statement lingered in the air. Amara looked at her carefully.
What does that mean?
Sandra glanced toward the road, then back at her.
It means life rewards action, not patience.
Amara frowned slightly. The statement rubbed her the wrong way. Yet she couldn't completely reject it because patience hadn't improved her situation. Sandra opened her car door.
We should catch up.
Sure.
No, seriously.
She handed Amara a business card.
I know someone.
Amara raised an eyebrow.
Someone?
A businessman.
What kind of businessman?
Sandra smiled.
The kind who changed my life.
Amara looked down at the card. No logo, no company information, just a name, Victor Kessler, and a phone number.
Call him.
Sandra climbed into her vehicle.
You might be surprised. The engine started. The SUV rolled away, leaving Amara standing alone near the school gate. The card remained in her hand. For a long moment, she stared at it, then slipped it into her purse. Only because throwing it away felt rude. At least that's what she told herself. But deep down, another reason existed.
For the first time in years, someone had offered a possibility, and desperate people are often willing to look at possibilities they would normally ignore. The card stayed in her purse for almost 3 weeks. Amara never called, at least not immediately. Every time she saw it, she remembered Sandra's words. I stopped waiting. The statement bothered her, because part of her disagreed with it, and another part feared it might be true. Life continued moving forward. Unfortunately, so did the problems. The landlord called twice regarding rent. David's school sent another reminder. Then the car finally broke down. Not a minor issue. Not something a mechanic could fix cheaply. The engine failed while she was driving home from work. The repair estimate made her stomach drop. She didn't even have enough money for half of it. That night, she sat alone in the apartment long after David had fallen asleep. The numbers were spread across the table again. The same notebook. The same bills. Only now there was a new expense. Tears filled her eyes. Not because she was weak, because she was tired. Tired of solving one crisis just in time for another one to appear. Tired of always being responsible. Tired of feeling like life was moving forward without her. Her phone buzzed and the screen lit up. It was a message from Sandra.
Still haven't called him?
Amara stared at the message, then typed back.
What exactly does he do?
3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then returned. Finally, Sandra replied.
Meet him and find out.
I don't like vague answers.
And I don't like seeing my friend struggle.
Amara stared at the screen. No response came after that. The conversation ended there, yet somehow it felt unfinished. 2 days later, she made the call. She told herself it was only curiosity, nothing more. Victor answered on the second ring. His voice sounded calm, confident, and professional, the kind of voice that instantly made people trust him. They spoke briefly. Then he invited her to lunch to a public place. There was nothing suspicious or secretive, just a conversation. Amara almost declined. Instead, she agreed. The restaurant overlooked the water, the kind of place she normally couldn't afford. Victor was already waiting when she arrived. Mid-40s, expensive watch. Tailored S crowned with a relaxed smile. He stood to greet her. The meeting began with ordinary conversation. Family, work, background. Nothing related to business. Victor asked questions, and unlike most people, he actually listened to the answers. Within 20 minutes, Amara found herself talking more openly than she expected. Victor never interrupted or judged. He simply listened. When she finally finished, he nodded.
You're carrying a lot.
The statement sounded sincere. Because sincere people are easy to trust.
Everyone is carrying something.
Amara replied, and Victor smiled.
True.
Then his expression shifted.
Tell me something. Do you believe hard work guarantees success?
Amara frowned.
I believe it improves your chances.
Victor nodded slowly.
A good answer, but look around.
Amara glanced through the restaurant. All she could see were businessmen, executives, successful people. Victor continued.
Many of them work hard, some don't, yet the outcomes are completely different.
She remained silent, and Victor took a sip of water.
The world rewards value, not effort, intentions, or patience, just value.
The word lingered, and worse, it sounded reasonable. Victor wasn't selling anything, That was what made him effective.
I spent years waiting for my breakthrough. Then I realized opportunities don't usually arrive through effort alone.
Amara listened carefully.
Then how do they arrive?
Victor smiled.
Through access,
The answer surprised her.
Access?
the right people, the right information, and the right timing.
He spread his hands.
Most successful people aren't working harder than everyone else. They simply see opportunities others never notice.
Amara looked away briefly. The statement made sense. More sense than she wanted to admit, because she had spent years working harder. Yet somehow she remained in the same place. Victor noticed her reaction immediately, like a fisherman sensing movement beneath the water.
You know, Sandra asked me to help you.
Amara looked up.
Help me?
She thinks highly of you.
Victor reached into his briefcase, then placed a folder on the table. Nothing dramatic.
You don't have to make any decisions today.
Amara glanced at it.
What is it?
An opportunity.
Her stomach tightened slightly, as Victor smiled like a man completely certain of his product. The folder remained between them. For several seconds, neither person touched it. Then slowly, Amara reached forward and opened it. Without realizing, she had just stepped through the first door. The folder contained charts, numbers, growth projections, investment reports. Everything looked professional. Clean design, detailed explanations, graphs showing steady returns over several years. Amara flipped through the pages slowly. The numbers immediately caught her attention because they were far larger than anything she had seen from a normal investment account. She frowned.
This can't be right.
Victor smiled.
What part?
The returns.
They're accurate.
Amara looked at him.
Nothing grows that fast.
Victor nodded as if he expected the objection.
Most things don't. This isn't a savings account, it's a private investment network.
The explanation sounded complicated enough to discourage further questions, which was exactly why it worked. Amara continued reading. Several well-known company names appeared throughout the document. International partnerships, real estate projects, technology ventures. Everything looked legitimate. Still, something bothered her.
If this is so profitable, why isn't everyone doing it?
Victor laughed.
Because most people never hear about it.
The answer came instantly, but Amara didn't notice. Victor had spent the entire meeting building credibility. By now, her skepticism had already weakened.
The opportunities available to the public are usually the leftovers. The best investments happen privately,
he said. When Amara returned home that evening, she couldn't stop thinking about the meeting. The folder sat beside her on the couch. David was asleep. The apartment was quiet, yet her mind refused to rest. She reviewed the numbers again. Every calculation led to the same conclusion. If the investment performed even half as well as promised, it could solve most of her problems. For years, she had prayed for a breakthrough. What if this was it? The thought immediately made her uncomfortable, because another voice followed. What if it isn't? She closed the folder, then reopened it. The battle continued deep into the night. The following Sunday, she arrived at church distracted. The pastor preached about wisdom, about seeking guidance before making important decisions. Normally, she listened carefully. Today, her thoughts drifted elsewhere. After the service, she found herself staring at Sandra across the parking lot. Sandra noticed immediately. A knowing smile appeared.
You met him.
Amara nodded and Sandra laughed softly.
I knew you would.
The confidence irritated her.
How long have you known him?
3 years. And you've never had problems?
Sandra folded her arms.
Look at me. I used to struggle worse than you.
Sandra said.
Remember my apartment? Remember when I couldn't pay tuition? Remember when I borrowed money from everybody?
Yes.
Amara admitted and Sandra smiled.
Then stop acting like I don't know what it's like.
The statement hit harder than Amara expected, because it was true. Sandra understood struggle. She had lived it. which made her success difficult to dismiss.
You think it's risky? Everything is risky. You drive every day. That's risky.
Sandra stepped closer.
The real question isn't whether something has risk. It's whether the reward justifies it.
The conversation lingered long after they parted ways. 3 days later, David came home carrying a letter. The moment Amara saw the school logo, her chest tightened. She already knew what it was. She didn't need to open it. She already knew every word inside. David stood awkwardly near the doorway.
Mom, if they send me home.
His voice trailed off. The boy couldn't finish the sentence. Amara felt something twist inside her chest. Children shouldn't have to worry about adult problems. Yet here he was, carrying anxiety that belonged to her.
We'll figure it out,
She said, and David nodded. But she could tell he wasn't convinced. Neither was she. That night, she called Victor, and he answered immediately.
Good evening, Amara.
His voice sounded almost pleased, as if he had expected this call.
I've been thinking, if I decide to invest, how much would I need?
For the first time, a smile appeared on his face. The hook had finally set, and neither of them realized how much that single question was about to cost. The following Friday, Amara emptied nearly everything she had saved. Not because she was greedy, because she was desperate. There is a difference. Desperate people often convince themselves they are being brave. She transferred the money, watched the confirmation appear, then sat quietly staring at the screen. A strange mixture of fear and hope filled her chest. The transaction was complete. There was no taking it back. For better or worse, the decision had been made. Outside, rain began falling against the apartment windows. Inside, Amara closed her eyes and whispered a prayer. Not for wisdom, not for guidance, not for clarity, for success. The shift was small, almost invisible, but it marked the beginning of a change she would not recognize until much later. The first payment arrived 14 days later. Amara checked the account 3 times before believing it. The return was exactly what Victor promised. She stared at the numbers, then refreshed the page. The balance remained. For several minutes, she simply sat there. After months of stress, years of worrying about money, and countless nights wondering how she would survive the next bill, seeing that amount felt unreal. The pressure in her chest eased for the first time in a very long while. That evening, she paid David's school fees in full. Not the overdue balance, the entire year. When the confirmation email arrived, she nearly cried. The next day, she transferred money for her car repairs. A week later, she replaced several broken appliances in the apartment. Nothing extravagant, just things she had postponed for years. Every problem she touched seemed to disappear. The timing felt almost miraculous, and that was the dangerous part. When something solves your pain, you stop questioning it. 3 months later, life looked completely different. The apartment felt lighter. David seemed happier. The constant anxiety had faded. Amara even started sleeping through the night again. People noticed the change. Co-workers commented on it. Church members commented on it. Her family commented on it. One Sunday after service, an older woman approached her.
You look different.
Amara smiled.
Do I?
The woman nodded.
You look peaceful.
For a brief moment, guilt flickered inside her. Not because she had done anything wrong, because she didn't want to explain where the change came from. Something about the opportunity still felt suspiciously private. She ignored the feeling. A month later, Victor invited her to dinner. This time, the conversation was different.
You've done well.
Amara smiled.
The investment has helped.
I expected it would.
Victor nodded. The confidence no longer bothered her. Now it reassured her. Victor slid another folder across the table, smaller than the first one.
What is this?
A bigger opportunity.
The folder contained another investment option with higher returns. The numbers made her heartbeat increase.
If this performs the same way,
Victor finished her sentence.
It could change your life.
The words lingered, because they targeted the exact weakness she carried. Not greed. Escape. She wasn't dreaming about yachts or mansions. She just wanted security and freedom. Just some breathing room, and Victor understood that. The changes became more visible over the following year. She moved into a better apartment. David finally got his own room and the roof didn't leak. The walls weren't stained. The neighborhood was safer. When David saw the place for the first time, his eyes widened.
This is ours.
Amara smiled.
yes.
She said, and the boy ran through the apartment laughing, opening doors, exploring rooms, planning where everything would go. Amara stood quietly in the living room watching him. That moment alone felt worth every decision she had made, every sacrifice, every risk, and of course, every doubt. People began treating her differently, not because she changed, because success changes how others see you. At work, her opinion suddenly mattered more. Family members called more often. Friends who hadn't spoken to her in years started checking in. Even church members seemed more interested in her life. The attention felt strange, but also satisfying. For years, she had felt invisible. Now people noticed her. One Sunday, the pastor invited members to share testimonies. Normally, Amara avoided public speaking. This time, she raised her hand. As she walked toward the altar, dozens of eyes followed her. She spoke about God's faithfulness, about breakthrough, about overcoming difficult seasons. The congregation applauded. Several people approached afterward asking questions, seeking advice, wanting to know how things changed. Amara answered carefully, but each conversation planted something inside her, a new identity. For years, she had been the struggling woman everyone pitied. Now she was becoming the woman people admired. And admiration can be just as addictive as money. The first real warning appeared 6 months later. It arrived quietly. It was a delayed payment, nothing major. Victor explained it immediately. He called it a temporary issue. His explanation sounded reasonable, so Amara accepted it. The second delay came a month later. Again, Victor had an explanation. Again, it sounded reasonable. The third delay felt harder to ignore. For the first time, a small knot formed in her stomach. Something felt off, but not enough to panic. That evening, she called Sandra.
You ever worry about this?
Sandra laughed.
Worry about what?
The delays.
A pause followed. Then Sandra sighed.
Amara, you've made money every single month. You've improved your life. You've seen the results with your own eyes. So why are you looking for reasons to be afraid?
Amara didn't have an answer. Fear and wisdom often feel similar in the beginning, and sometimes people mistake one for the other. That night, she chose to trust Victor. Again, what she didn't realize was that every warning sign becomes easier to ignore after you've already benefited from the lie. And somewhere far ahead, consequences were already moving toward her. She just couldn't see them yet. The warnings should have stopped her. Instead, they pushed her deeper. That is how most traps work. Nobody walks into them when they are obvious. They walk into them because leaving becomes harder than staying, especially after success has already arrived. One afternoon, Victor called unexpectedly.
Are you free this evening?
Amara glanced at the clock.
After work.
Good. I want you to meet someone.
The meeting took place in a private conference room inside an expensive hotel. When Amara arrived, nearly 20 people were already there. Business owners, professionals, retirees, teachers. Several looked wealthier than she was. Others looked far more educated. Victor moved comfortably among them, shaking hands, calling people by name, remembering details about their lives. The room trusted him. That was immediately obvious. Then the presentations began. Charts, growth projections, expansion plans, investment opportunities. Everything looked bigger than before, far bigger. One of the investors stood up and spoke. He had supposedly doubled his capital. Another claimed the company paid for his daughter's university education. A third said the returns helped him buy property. The stories sounded familiar, because they mirrored Amara's own experience. That made them difficult to question. By the time the meeting ended, her remaining doubts felt embarrassingly small. Perhaps she had been worrying for nothing. The following month, Victor approached her with an offer. A partnership role, not official employment. A referral position. She introduced investors, and the company rewarded her. The commission structure was generous. Amara hesitated.
I don't know.
Victor smiled.
Why?
What if something goes wrong?
Victor folded his hands.
Have you seen evidence that something is wrong?
No.
Have we ever failed to pay you?
Amara hesitated.
Have you personally benefited?
Yes.
Victor nodded.
Then why are you treating opportunity like danger?
Again, everything always sounded reasonable. That was the problem. Danger rarely introduces itself honestly. The first person she referred was her cousin, a nurse, the hardworking and responsible, the kind of person who researched everything. He spent weeks asking questions, reviewing documents, speaking to Victor, reviewing them again before he finally invested. 3 months later, he called her, excited because the returns had arrived, exactly as promised. Amara felt relief wash through her. If things were legitimate enough for him, then perhaps her fears really had been unnecessary. Soon another referral followed, then another and another. Each successful payment weakened her remaining caution. Eventually, she stopped seeing herself as a participant. She began seeing herself as proof that the system worked. Her reputation grew. People listened when she spoke. Friends sought her advice. Family members asked questions. Church members pulled her aside after service. The attention felt good, far better than she wanted to admit. One evening after Bible study, a widow named Mrs. Adebayo approached her. The woman was nearly 60. Her husband had died years earlier. She lived carefully. Every naira mattered.
I heard you've been doing very well.
Amara smiled politely.
God has been good.
The older woman nodded, then lowered her voice.
Someone told me you found a good investment.
The question made Amara uncomfortable. For a brief moment, she considered ending the conversation. Instead, she explained conservatively. She even warned about risk. The widow listened patiently, asked questions, and took notes. 3 weeks later, she invested her retirement savings. When Amara learned about it, a strange feeling settled inside her chest. For the first time, other people's futures were connected to her decisions. The feeling should have frightened her. Instead, it made her feel important. Months passed. Money continued flowing. The apartment became a house. The kind Amara once believed belonged to other people. David finally had a backyard, a proper bedroom, a study area. One evening, he sat beside her on the porch.
Mom, are we rich now?
The question made her laugh.
No.
David thought for a moment.
We feel rich.
The answer lingered with her because she understood exactly what he meant. They no longer feared every phone call, no longer feared every bill. The constant pressure was gone, and that relief was beginning to cloud her judgment. The next warning came from somewhere unexpected. Church. Pastor Emmanuel requested a meeting. Nothing formal, just a conversation. Amara sat across from him in his office. The older man smiled warmly.
How have you been?
Good.
Very good from what I hear.
She laughed.
People talk too much.
The pastor chuckled. Then his expression grew thoughtful.
I wanted to ask about these investments.
Immediately, her stomach tightened.
What about them?
The pastor leaned back.
Several members have mentioned them. I'm not accusing anyone of wrongdoing.
He chose his words carefully.
but rapid wealth often deserves careful examination.
Amara felt defensive immediately.
Are you saying I'm doing something wrong?
No,
Then what are you saying?
The pastor sighed.
I'm saying that not everything that looks like a blessing comes from wisdom.
The statement irritated her, more than it should have, because it felt like criticism. And people rarely enjoy questioning the things that benefit them.
You don't understand the situation.
The pastor nodded calmly.
Perhaps.
His response only frustrated her further. The conversation ended politely. Yet as she drove home, anger simmered beneath the surface. For years, nobody offered solutions. Nobody offered opportunities. Nobody paid her bills. Now that she was succeeding, everyone suddenly had concerns. The thought felt justified, at least at the time. That night, she sat alone in her office. The house was quiet, and David was asleep. A stack of investment reports sat on her desk. Normally, they reassured her. Tonight, they didn't. Pastor Emmanuel's words kept returning. Not everything that looks like a blessing comes from wisdom. She opened one of the reports. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't looking at profits. She was looking for answers. And buried beneath all the polished presentations, all the success stories, and all the money, she found something unsettling. Not evidence or proof, just questions. Questions she realized she could no longer answer. And for the first time in years, the fear returned. Only this time it felt different. Because deep down, Amara was beginning to suspect that she had stopped asking questions the moment the money started arriving. For the next several weeks, Amara tried convincing herself she was overthinking. Every concern had a reasonable explanation. Every inconsistency had an answer. Every delay eventually resolved itself. Yet the feeling remained, like a small stone trapped inside a shoe. Easy to ignore at first, but impossible to forget once you noticed it. The first crack appeared when one of her referrals called late at night. It was her cousin. His voice sounded tense.
Have you spoken to Victor recently?
Why?
My withdrawal is still pending.
Her stomach tightened slightly.
How long?
3 weeks.
That was longer than normal.
What did they say?
The usual administrative delays.
Neither of them spoke for several seconds. Finally, Amara said,
They'll fix it.
The words sounded confident. But she no longer felt confident. After ending the call, she immediately messaged Victor. The response arrived 20 minutes later. A lengthy explanation. They claimed it was new banking regulations and international compliance reviews. The response felt professional, yet something felt different this time. For the first time, she wasn't reassured. She was irritated, because she realized she had heard different versions of the same explanation before. 2 weeks later, another investor contacted her, then a few more. At first, the issues seemed unrelated. Individually, none seemed alarming, but together, they painted a picture she didn't like. One Saturday morning, Amara drove directly to Victor's office. She needed answers, real answers, not emails. The reception area looked exactly as it always had. Busy employees moving between offices. Everything appeared normal. Yet when she asked for Victor, the receptionist hesitated, only for a second. But Amara noticed.
He isn't available today.
When will he return?
I'm not sure.
The answer immediately raised alarms. Victor always seemed available. Amara tried calling him, but there was no answer. She tried again. Still nothing. A third attempt went directly to voicemail. For the first time, genuine fear entered her chest. That evening, Sandra called. Amara answered immediately.
Something's wrong. Have you spoken to Victor?
Sandra fell silent. Eventually, Sandra sighed heavily.
I've been getting calls too.
The statement made Amara's stomach drop.
You mean you're having problems?
Sandra didn't answer immediately. That answer was enough. For nearly a year, Sandra had been the person who reassured everyone, the person who always had confidence. Hearing uncertainty in her voice felt wrong, dangerously wrong.
Tell me the truth.
Sandra exhaled slowly.
I don't know what's happening.
The fear Amara had been suppressing suddenly became impossible to ignore. Because if Sandra didn't know, then nobody knew. 3 days later, the news broke. Amara first saw it while scrolling through her phone during lunch, and her blood ran cold. The financial company had become the subject of an investigation. Authorities alleged fraud and potential criminal activity. Amara stared at the screen, reading the article once, yet her brain refused to process it. This couldn't be happening. Not after everything she had seen. Not after all the people involved. The article had to be wrong. It had to be. Then her phone started ringing. The screen filled with names of friends, relatives, investors, even church members. All the people she had introduced, people she had convinced. For several seconds, she simply stared at the phone, unable to answer, unable to breathe, because she already knew what they were going to ask, and she had no answers. The next 48 hours felt unreal. The company offices closed. The website disappeared. Customer support vanished. Accounts became inaccessible. Withdrawals stopped completely. Victor's phone no longer worked. His email bounced back. His social media accounts disappeared. It was as if the man had never existed, yet the consequences remained. Thousands of people wanted answers, and Amara had none. The realization struck her hardest on Wednesday afternoon. A knock sounded at her front door. When she opened it, Mrs. Adebayo stood outside, the woman who had invested her retirement savings. Her eyes looked tired.
Amara, please tell me what's happening.
Amara opened her mouth, and nothing came out. Because for the first time since this nightmare began, the disaster became personal. This was a woman who trusted her, a woman who spent decades saving for retirement, a woman who followed her advice, and now stood on her doorstep searching for hope. Hope Amara could no longer provide. Mrs. Adebayo's eyes filled with tears. The collapse accelerated faster than anyone imagined. Within days, every news station seemed to be talking about the investigation. Everyone had an opinion, and everyone wanted answers. The phone never stopped ringing. People she hadn't spoken to in years suddenly remembered her number. Some were polite, others weren't. One man called 6 times before noon. Another left voice messages filled with panic. Several demanded explanations. A few demanded refunds. The worst calls came from the people who trusted her most. People who invested because her name was attached to the opportunity. Every conversation felt like another stone added to her chest. By the end of the week, she stopped answering. Not because she didn't care, because she couldn't survive hearing the fear in their voices anymore. Then came the visit. Her cousin arrived without warning, the first person she ever referred. He stood outside her house looking exhausted. Amara already knew why he was there. Neither spoke immediately. He entered quietly and sat across from her. The silence stretched. Finally, he asked,
"Did you know?"
The question cut deeper than any accusation, because it wasn't angry. It was hurt. Amara immediately shook her head. He stared at her, looking for signs of deception. Anything. Finally, he looked away.
"My wife didn't want to invest, but I convinced her. I told her we could trust you."
His voice cracked, and Amara lowered her eyes. The room fell silent. Neither person knew what to say, because some damage exists beyond words. Eventually, he left, without saying another word. When the door closed behind him, Amara sat motionless for nearly an hour, because she realized something terrifying. People weren't only losing money, they were losing trust. And trust takes far longer to rebuild. The following Sunday, she didn't go to church. For the first time in years, she couldn't. She imagined the whispers, the stares, the conversations that would stop when she entered. So she stayed home. Around noon, David entered the living room.
Are we not going?
Amara forced a smile.
Not today.
The boy nodded, then sat beside her. For several moments, neither spoke. Finally, he asked,
Are we in trouble?
Amara looked at him. The question sounded simple, but she heard the fear beneath it. Children always know more than adults think.
Why would you ask that?
David hesitated, then looked down.
Some kids at school were talking.
Her stomach dropped.
What did they say?
The boy remained silent. Amara already knew. Still, she waited. Finally, he whispered.
They said you stole people's money.
The room suddenly felt smaller and the air heavier. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. David quickly continued.
I told them they were lying.
His voice carried certainty, the kind only children possess. Then he looked directly into her eyes.
Mom?
Amara swallowed hard.
Yes, you're not a bad person, right?
The question shattered her because she suddenly realized how much had been lost. Her reputation, her savings. However, none of that compared to this. The possibility that her son might someday look at her differently. Tears filled her eyes. She immediately pulled him into a hug, holding him tighter than usual.
No, David.
Her voice trembled. The boy hugged her back, and for the first time since the collapse began, Amara cried. Not for herself, but for him, for the burden her choices had placed on shoulders far too young to carry it. 3 weeks later, authorities officially confirmed the worst. The company had been operating as a sophisticated fraud scheme. Millions had vanished. Thousands were affected. Recovery efforts could take years. Most victims would never see their money again. Victor Kessler remained missing. Sandra remained missing. Neither had been located. The announcement ended any remaining hope. The nightmare was real. The next morning, Amara sat alone at her kitchen table. The same table where she once calculated bills. The same table where she once dreamed of escape. The same table where she convinced herself she had finally found her breakthrough. Sunlight filtered through the window. Dust floated through the air. The house felt strangely quiet. Then she noticed something. A Bible sitting on a nearby shelf, untouched. Months ago, she read it daily. Months ago, she prayed every night. But somewhere along the journey, she stopped. Not intentionally, but gradually. Success replaced dependence. Comfort replaced caution. Money replaced patience. She stared at the Bible for a long time, then finally walked over and picked it up. The pages opened almost automatically and her eyes drifted to a single verse. The Lord is good to those whose hope is in Him, to the one who seeks Him. It is good to wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. Amara stared at the words, then laughed bitterly because she suddenly understood the tragedy wasn't that she lost the money. The tragedy was how much she had been willing to ignore while chasing it. And for the first time since everything collapsed, she stopped asking how to get her life back. Instead, she asked a harder question. How do you rebuild after becoming someone you no longer recognize? The rebuilding began with humiliation. Not some dramatic moment where everything suddenly made sense. It was pure humiliation, because rebuilding required facing people she desperately wanted to avoid. The first apology took her 3 days. 3 days of writing, deleting, starting again, then deleting again. Nothing sounded right. How do you apologize for helping people lose their savings? How do you explain that you believed the lie too? Eventually, she stopped searching for perfect words because perfect words didn't exist. She picked up the phone and called Mrs. Adebayo. The widow answered immediately. Her voice sounded tired and older somehow.
Hello.
Amara's throat tightened.
Good afternoon, Ma.
A pause followed. The older woman recognized the voice immediately. Neither spoke. Finally, Amara forced the words out.
I'm sorry.
The apology sounded small compared to the damage, almost meaningless, but it was all she had. Mrs. Adebayo eventually sighed.
You didn't steal from me.
But I convinced you.
Yes, you did. You were wrong. But I don't believe you were evil.
The distinction broke something inside her, because for months she had been treating herself as both. Maybe they weren't the same thing. The next year became the hardest period of her life. Not because she was poor again, but because she was rebuilding trust, and trust grows slower than money. The house had to be sold. Most of the remaining savings disappeared paying debts and legal expenses. She moved into a smaller apartment, not as small as the one she started in, but smaller than the life she had become accustomed to. David never complained, he simply adapted. Finding work proved difficult. Every interview felt the same. The moment employers recognized her name, the atmosphere changed. People smiled less. Questions became sharper, and conversations became shorter. Months passed. Applications disappeared into silence. Doors remained closed. Eventually, a small accounting firm offered her a position. The salary was modest. The office was ordinary. The opportunity felt like a lifeline. She accepted immediately. On her first day, she arrived 30 minutes early. Every task mattered. Every paycheck mattered. Every opportunity mattered. Pain had taught her gratitude again. One evening, nearly a year after the collapse, David entered the kitchen while she was preparing dinner. He was older now, taller and more observant. He sat at the table quietly.
Mom, can I ask you something?
Of course.
The boy hesitated, then asked the question she had secretly feared.
Why did you trust them?
Amara stopped chopping vegetables. For several seconds, she stared at the cutting board. The easy answer would have been greed. Finally, she sat down across from him.
I was tired of struggling and waiting, tired of feeling left behind. I wanted things to get better.
His expression softened slightly.
That's not bad. So what was the mistake?
The question lingered because she had spent months asking herself the same thing. Finally, she answered.
I stopped caring whether something was right. I only cared whether it worked.
David considered the statement, then slowly nodded. The simplicity of the lesson seemed to make sense to him. Children often understand truths adults spend years complicating. Time passed slowly and painfully. But it passed. 2 years became 3. 3 became 4. Life stabilized gradually. Amara rebuilt her reputation the same way a damaged house is repaired. One brick at a time. One decision at a time. People slowly began trusting her again. Not because she demanded forgiveness, because she consistently earned it. One afternoon, nearly 5 years after everything collapsed, a young woman arrived at her office fresh out of university. The younger version of Amara stood in front of her, just wearing a different face. The woman sat down nervously, then asked a question Amara recognized immediately.
How do I get ahead faster?
Amara almost laughed, because she remembered asking the same thing. For a moment, she looked out the office window. Construction workers were building a new structure across the street. She turned back toward the young woman and smiled.
That's the wrong question. The better question is whether you're becoming the kind of person who can handle success when it arrives.
The young woman looked confused, and Amara understood why. 5 years earlier, she wouldn't have understood either. Because some lessons only make sense after they've cost you something. And hers had cost nearly everything. The young woman left with more questions than answers. Amara expected that. Wisdom rarely feels satisfying when you're desperate. People want instructions, shortcuts. What they usually need is patience. The two are rarely the same thing. A few weeks later, Pastor Emmanuel invited her to speak at church. The invitation surprised her. She almost declined, but accepted, because perhaps her mistakes could serve some purpose. The church looked exactly the same. Standing at the altar, she looked across the congregation, and for several moments she simply looked at them.
I used to think my greatest mistake was trusting the wrong people. I was wrong. My greatest mistake was becoming impatient with the process. I convinced myself that because I was tired, I deserved a shortcut. Because I had struggled, I believed I had earned immediate success. But life doesn't work that way. You cannot force a harvest. You cannot rush growth. You cannot skip preparation and expect to carry what comes afterward.
The room felt still, almost frozen, because everyone recognized the truth, even when they didn't like it. Amara smiled softly. The hardest lesson I ever learned was this: if God is making you wait, that doesn't mean He is ignoring you. If the foundation isn't ready, the blessing can become the very thing that destroys you. The words hung in the air, and for the first time in many years, Amara felt peace. Not because she had become wealthy, but because she finally understood something. Some seasons are not designed to give you what you want. They are designed to prepare you for what is coming. And sometimes the greatest act of faith is staying where you are until the season changes. Not running ahead of it. Not forcing it. Not trying to take tomorrow before today is finished. Just trusting the process. One day at a time. One step at a time. One season at a time.